Today we're going to try two different lenses out, look at them in detail. I have a Tamron SP 85mm f1.8 for the EF mount and the Canon EF 85mm f1.8. Can look at them in detail, image quality, video autofocus on my Canon EOS M50 with two different adapters. We have the standard adapter and the Filtrx speed booster. Also thanks to Cameracraft in Rockford, Illinois for letting me try this Tamron lens out. They rent these at the shop. Let's get started. Right off the bat, you can see the Tamron lens is significantly larger, but it does have shake reduction in the lens itself. So that's one big benefit. And just build quality wise, it's extremely solid feeling compared to the EF 85mm, but that's really not bad as well. But definitely more hefty. The plastics, the materials feel more solid in the hand when you hold these lenses. The Tamron also appears to have some type of weather resistance on the back. It has a rubber gasket, at least from the mount perspective. There is a gasket there, which is nice to have. Here are photos with me with the two different lenses. I used my phone to trigger remotely the camera from a decent distance away just to get some people photos in here. Don't have any models, so gonna use me. Very simple 2-second timer, so there is some potential for movement. I took 2 photos, or around 2 photos per aperture. I'm gonna look at a few of them here. Here is f1.8 with the Canon on the left. So I tried to pick the best focused photos of the group that I did have for these. Actually even my facial expression is very similar in these two. Getting close to your face is not a fun thing. But yeah, I can't complain. They both seem to focus pretty well. In this case, the Canon does have a lot more fringing, so that's something to consider, which I'm personally very much not a fan of purple fringing. You can see the focus is slightly different on these two, which could be part of the reason why the Canon shows more fringing on the glasses, because the focus might be different. Here at f4, let's look at the backgrounds. Don't really see any difference. Let's actually zoom in here on the background. So you can see the aperture differences with the blades. I don't really notice anything important. They're so similar, which is good. They both look good. No weirdness to the background blur. Zoom in. See, both of them got nice focus in this case, and I was not moving around, so it worked out well. Looking at 5.6 with the full view, again, extremely similar. No surprise. Let's look at the background blur. In this case, I think the Canon has a little bit more color to the background blur, which is interesting. Kind of a blue-green to the edges, which means some type of aberration, so less controlled on the Canon. Here are the two f8 full view. Actually, that's really well in focus. It's f8 looks completely in focus with both of them. At f8 is a good amount of area that would be in focus in this case. Good result. The Canon lens has one single switch on it for autofocus and manual focus. The Tamron lens has that, and it also has one for the vibration control. The focus ring on the Tamron is again very solid. There's no play to it. It's smooth to focus and really nice in my opinion. The one on the EF 85mm has a little bit of play to it. I don't know if it's just my specific copy. I bought this one, but there's no issue really. It's just not as solid feeling compared to that Tamron lens. Now we're going to look at the autofocus tests with these two different lenses. With video autofocus, I was surprised how quiet the Tamron was compared to the Canon lens. Nice pleasant surprise. Now we're going to look at image quality and see how they stack up for the f1.8. So this is always a challenge with focus, getting it proper on both images. I had to switch the lenses, and the Tamron's very heavy, so it kind of pulls down the whole setup a little bit. Again, they're so similar, but I do think the Canon has more fringing at 1.8. If one of your biggest focuses is getting low aberration on large apertures, I do think the Tamron is a better bet. F1.8, interesting look to it. Try to get some blur in the background. Maybe slight back focus again with the Tamron versus the Canon. But if you had to, if it was a consistent thing, you could definitely adjust it in the tap-in console deal. I suspect it's just that when I put the different lenses on, something moves a little bit. You know, really like this image. They look good in both of them. You can see there's more information right here. Most likely different focal point. But again, the Canon has more fringing, which is not a good thing. Let's try f8. Now at f8, they look extremely similar. So this area, see with the smaller aperture, this area is very, very similar. Maybe the Canon has slightly more information. Let's go to f2.8 with this image. Again, with the Canon, more fringing. No surprise. Detail is similar. Oh, that's a rough result there. I do like, very much like the Tamron is really well corrected. That would be nice. Try this area here. Yeah, that is a big difference. Wow. That's at 2.8. So there is definitely something you gain with that price difference. At f8, actually the Canon looks a little bit better. Again, maybe some fringing, but you do get more detail at f8 with the Canon. At f1.8, the center looks very, very similar. Let's see, these are 1/320th of a second. So here you can actually see more detail. Again, there's a slight color difference with the two, which is interesting. A little warmer, a little cooler, but still a lot of detail in both of them at 1.8. On the left side, it looks like the Tamron has a little bit more information. Just the edges, the lines are slightly more detailed on the Tamron. On the left, let's try the other side. Canon actually has some fringing, like green fringing, but the Tamron yellow edges. I think that looks a little bit better actually with the Tamron. In that case, try the bottom edge. So here there's actually a lot more information on the Tamron compared to the Canon on that bottom right edge. Similar situation, looks like some more information on the Tamron. Here's the Canon and the Tamron at f2.8. Check out the center. Very, very similar. It would be hard to discern any difference in this case. Try this little area again. Actually, I do think the Tamron looks a little better in this case as well at 2.8. Okay. Let's try the other side, see if they're same situation. Yeah, there is more information there at 2.8. It's actually a little bit less here. That's interesting. So maybe the book is slightly off and it benefited the Canon here with the focus. Let's jump up to 5.6. So at 5.6 we're getting a lot more information. I would say in this specific case, assuming the autofocus was not off with the Tamron, there is more information in the Canon image, in my opinion, than the Tamron right in the center. Yeah, I do. The lines here have a little more definition to them in this specific aperture and focus case. Yeah, even this side here. I'm wondering if the Tamron was slightly off focus in this specific instance. They both look good, it's just that I think the Canon in this at 5.6 looks a little better. Now we're at f8 with the two different lenses. I think the Canon in this case, similar to 5.6, the Canon is better in the center. This area looks very similar. Let's try it over here with this nice texture. Let's try the edges. Good result. On this side, usually the Canon looks a little better, which seems to be the case again. On the right side, they look nearly identical. Even the fringing is very, very close. Dot here, another dot. The nice thing with the Tamron, it does come with a lens hood. Canon really doesn't like including lens hoods. Now, I guess if you don't use them that much like me, it's really not an issue because it's just an added cost with that. So just something to consider, but the hood is very nice. It seems to work well. It doesn't have any type of door for filters, polarizers, but regardless, it's pretty nice and solid. For the Tamron lens, it uses 67mm filters, and the Canon lens uses 58mm. Both of them are widely available, so that's not an issue, but it is interesting that they have different sizes for the filters. With the Tamron having 9 aperture blades and the Canon having 8 aperture blades, there's probably a difference with the aperture, so we're going to check out first with the OEM adapter and then the Viltrox. Start out with 1.8, there should not be any difference here, but we'll check it out. At f1.8, don't see any difference. At f2.8 we have the Canon on the left, so with the Canon, this edge here is a little sharper, which is generally not a good thing with background blur. Point source lights, you want those nice round balls. 5.6 here. Both of them are not rounded at this point. However, I think the Canon is a little bit better at 5.6. Here at f8, I do think the Canon is a little better at f8. So with those narrower apertures, you're probably going to get slightly rounder point source light balls. Here we have the Viltrox. We're going to look at f1.2 on both lenses. Here at 1.2, of course, they should look very similar, but let's look at them close up, see if there is any difference. Let's jump up to 1.8. At 1.8, the Tamron is better, smoother, rounder. See a big difference right there. This edge here on the Canon, that point is more defined, which is a bad thing in this case, than the Tamron. Right at f3.2, we have the Canon on the left. At 3.2, they are very similar. Don't see any difference worth noting, although the Tamron is a little smoother in some areas, which is good. Let's go to f4 this time. At f4, I would say that the Canon is starting to get better with background point source lights. I did try to test out the vibration control with the Tamron lens. Pretty challenging, but I think I got an interesting result. Did also take some photos with the Canon. Of course, it doesn't have vibration control in the lens. I just had a simple setup with the test bench. Tried to hold it steady, but I didn't really put a lot of effort into it. With the OEM adapter, I also took photos with the Viltrox just to see if the VC worked with the Tamron and the Viltrox. I was curious. So here with the OEM adapter, Canon lens, so we start at 0.3 of a second and go up to 1/320th of a second. We do have a few anomalies that turned out. That is 1/6 of a second. We go up to around 1/100th, 1/200th of a second. It's going to get pretty good because it's fast enough that even when I'm moving around, it's going to look decent. Let's go to the Viltrox with the Canon real quick. Going to be very similar results, but we'll check it out. Here we've got 1/2 of a second. Let's see, go through them. And there's some decent anomalies, but you can see once we hit 200 and 320, it looks good. Let's go to the Tamron. This is with the OEM adapter. In this one, we can compare some images here. Let's try 0.4 of a second. Here we're at 0.4 of a second. We have off on the left, on the right. You can see the on is slightly better, but still it's not a good result. Let's jump up to a faster speed here at 1/8 of a second. Let's go zoom in right here. You can see that when it's on, it is improving things, but not a huge amount. I think it's rated 3.5 stops, so if you want to calculate that, feel free. At 1/10 of a second, it is again improving the situation. Looks pretty decent, but it's still very blurry. Definitely better than hand-holding without VC on. Let's jump up to 1/50th of a second. At 1/50th of a second, it is actually a little better without it. Now that just comes down to technique, but they are very similar. It's probably just my mistake here that I was moving a little bit. Let's jump up to 1/100th of a second. At 100th of a second, it's kind of within that border of it could be decent either way. Let's go into 1/200th of a second. 1/200th of a second. Let's go right in there. You can see that it did improve the situation. So when you're doing those fast shutter speeds and you want the best image quality possible, there is a good chance that the vibration control in the lens can help out. We're going to go to the Viltrox Tamron combination, see if the VC actually worked out. 1/10 of a second. I do think there is an improvement with the VC on, in this case with the Viltrox, so it appears to work. 1/50th of a second. You can see there is a very good improvement on image quality with the VC on. That's a great result. See that it is definitely helping out. But again, there could be a little bit of technique. 1/100th of a second. Definitely at that point where you hit the 100th of a second with 85, the Viltrox, you want a decent result, and it does help out. It's nice to see that the third-party adapter does work with the lens, the VC, the autofocus, all of that. At 1/200th of a second, let's zoom in. So you can see it did improve things again with the lens, and the VC on looks quite a bit better than off with the Viltrox. We're going to look at the tap-in console for the Tamron lens that allows you to hook it up to the computer and update firmware, adjust parameters in the lens. Right, here's the link for the download to the tap-in console. It's just a simple application for Windows or Mac. So here is the tap-in console. It shows the lens is attached. That's good. Didn't have to do anything special. Let's just check the firmware updates. So the lens is up to date, no new firmware, but I assume we go through the process if there was one. So here, the main focus adjustment. This more applies to DSLRs with their phase detect system. It's potentially misaligned, and there's some always a few issues potentially with DSLRs, but with mirrorless, in my case, it wouldn't be a problem most likely. The interesting one here is VC mode. You can put priority to the viewfinder or actual image that you're taking. But that's pretty much it from this setup with the tap-in console. It is nice that it is an option to adjust lens parameters and such. That was a look at the Tamron SP 85mm versus the EF 85mm f1.8. This Tamron is an interesting lens. It's super huge and solid, but it does have that nice vibration control in the lens, which would be helpful with the lens like this at 85. Of course, I didn't test them on full frame cameras. I just don't have one on hand, but I did have the speed booster, which gave us a little bit better look at these lenses. But besides that, hope you found this video interesting. Again, thanks to Camera in Rockford, Illinois for letting me try this lens out. They do rent these, as I mentioned, which is very nice. So I potentially might check these out in the future because it does seem to work pretty well with autofocus. I'm surprised, but it's been a long time since I've used any type of Tamron lens. Anyways, hope you enjoyed this video. Big look at these lenses. Scott Photography Banzai. If you did enjoy the video, please consider subscribing. It helps me out a lot. Likes and shares help out a lot as well. Thanks again.